Hi, this is Pebblestone Flooring. I'm James.
I'm Scott.
Today we're going to show you how to install Pebblestone, the materials needed, and also the installation. Very simple process, and we're going to begin and show you everything.
Hi, welcome to the beginning of the installation. Here we have our 50-pound bag of Pebblestone. Comes dry, pre-mixed, which color you've selected. Accompanying that will be your epoxy for stone. You have your component A, which is your resin, B, which is your hardener. We'll get to mixing that later once we start the installation. Gloves, always a necessity. You don't want to be getting, it's very sticky, it's hard to get off. Mineral spirits, this is what you're going to use to sweat your trowel. This will make sure you get a nice clean press on the surface without having stone being pulled up with the trowel. All-purpose mixing buckets. These are going to be very, very simple to mix in. As you can see, they're available at Home Depot. You can find them pretty much anywhere. Drill with 2 mixing paddles. Smaller size for mixing the epoxy, larger size for mixing the stone and the epoxy together. And we'll get to all that, how it all works together here in just a minute.
Here we go with the installation of Pebblestone. What you want to start with is you want to start with per bag, per 50-pound bag of rock, you want to do 20 ounces of A. These buckets are available at Home Depot. Scott's going to go ahead and mark the bucket at 20 ounces and then put an A next to it so we know where to go to. You then want to come back and you want to do 10 ounces of B. It is a 2-to-1 mix on this epoxy. And he will mark that. So now what Scott will do is he will take the A component, which on the bottle you can see the big A, which is your resin. Scott will add 20 ounces up to the line of A. Again, this is per bag, per 50-pound bag. If you're doing 2 bags out of a time through a mixer or a mud box, you will double the amount of epoxy. Now Scott will add the B, which is your hardener. This is it's a 2-to-1 mix, so we're doing 1%, which is 10 ounces of B. Once Scott gets to the line, he will then go get his drill with the paddle on it. This is just your regular drill. There's nothing fancy about the drill with a mixing paddle on it. What you want to do is you want to mix the A and the B together for about a minute to get all chemicals going. You want to hit all the sides of the bucket, you want to hit the bottom, you want to make sure that it's at a full mix. You'll start to see air bubbles in it, which isn't a problem. As you can see, the color's changing on it. It'll become a little bit cloudy, which is fine. Again, make sure you wear plastic, rubber, latex or vinyl gloves when doing this. The epoxy is not a hazardous product, but is sticky. So where we're at now, Scott is taking half of the 50-pound bag and put it into 1 bucket. Dealing with a full 50-pound bag, you want to have 2 buckets, half of the bag in each bucket. Now he's going to be taking the epoxy, which is pre-mixed, pouring half of it into the bucket of pebbles, saving the other half for the other bucket.
As you can see, I've switched out the mixing paddle from the smaller mixing bucket for the epoxy to the larger one, which is going to make it a lot easier to mix up the stone, get a good quality coat over all of your stone.
As you can see, Scott took the mixer and he actually mixed the epoxy and the rock together to get a full coat. He made sure for about 2 minutes, went over the whole thing, made sure he got a complete coverage on all the pebbles, which brings out the color once the epoxy coats all the rock.
Next step then is to pick your starting point. pour out your rock in lines or sections. You never want to pour too much rock in a big pile. It's going to make it very difficult to gauge your depth as you're going ahead and troweling the product. Next step before we begin, make sure we sweat our trowel with mineral spirits, which is in any paint aisle at any of your local hardware stores.
With mineral spirits, you could also use denatured alcohol, xylene, or even acetone. We use mineral spirits. It's a little oily, sweats the trowel nice, and floats out the rock a little bit better than some of the other products. Scott now has taken the trowel, cleaning it, making sure that there's mineral spirits on it. You don't want it to drip off, just want to make sure the trowel's nice and clean. Now Scott's taking the product, spreading it out with his trowel. We want to spread the product anywhere between 3/8 of an inch thick to a half. This will give you a coverage of about 12 square feet per bag and a work time of probably about anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes per bag to float out. As you can see, when Scott's working the trowel, he's working the edges. After a few swipes, he wipes the trowel, which gets all the epoxy off the trowel, which causes it to stick. Now, as he presses, as you can see, the epoxy does not stick to the trowel. Scott's taking the edge of the trowel, flattening it out, making a smooth surface which presses down the rock so you don't have any rocks or high spots.
Now as I'm going through and finishing, we have everything gauged at the correct depth. I always want to make sure and get down nice and low and make sure to smooth out any of the trowel marks, any high rocks that you may see. Again, always sweating your trowel on a frequent basis to ensure you get a nice skip across the surface of the stone. Once we think we've completed an area, we're going to do one last swipe. Make sure it's nice and smooth, always finishing towards ourselves. Once your mix is down, go ahead and pour another line where the previous mix has been finished.
Make sure when floating out your next batch, always feather into your previous batch so you do not get any lines. As you can see, Scott is going over the previous area he was in, making sure that everything feathers in nicely. Well, that's how you install Pebblestone flooring. Scott did the demo of how to float the product out. To do a recap, Scott explained the process from start to finish.
We started by putting half our 50-pound bag in one bucket, half our 50-pound bag in another bucket. We've mixed up the A and B components of our epoxy in a mixing bucket with using a mixing paddle and a drill. We then split the bucket into the dry stone in the 5-gallon pails, mixed that up, poured it out in a straight line, and went ahead and finished it using a concrete finishing trowel. As we're floating and gauging our stone, we're constantly sweating the trowel with mineral spirits. This will give you a nice smooth press. You won't have any stone and epoxy sticking to your trowel.
If you have any other further questions, you can contact us through our website at pebblestoneflooringsystems.com. Thank you, and now you have a new Pebblestone floor.